All right, welcome back, everyone. We are diving straight into another explainer today, and honestly, this one is absolutely fascinating. We're going to look at the beautiful game, football, but not just as fans cheering from the stands. We're going to bridge that gap between raw, spine-tingling human emotion and the cold, hard physics that actually makes those impossible moments a reality. We are deconstructing the anatomy of a wonder goal.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. 1. Legendary football strikes. 2. The physics of flight. 3. The mechanics of the bounce. 4. Tracking the trajectory. And 5. The emotion and lore.
Section 1. Legendary football strikes, defying time and space.
You know, we always hear football is a game of patience, right? Well, not always. Sometimes a goal happens literally before you can even blink. In 2007, Roy Mackay scored for Bayern Munich in just over 10 seconds. Tim Cahill struck in 8 seconds for the Socceroos. Jim Fry scored in 4 seconds back in 1964. And then, in 2009, Saudi Arabia's Nawaf Al-Abed absolutely smashed a ball straight from kickoff into the back of the net in a mind-bending 2.4 seconds, literally from the referee's whistle to a goal.
And it's not just about speed, is it? It's about sheer distance. 91.89 meters. That is the staggering Guinness World Record set by goalkeeper Asmir Begovic for the longest goal ever scored. I mean, the guy literally scored from inside his own penalty box. And then we have the strikes that seemingly defy gravity and logic. Zlatan Ibrahimovic's staggering 30-yard overhead bicycle kick against England. Just a moment of incredible improvisation. David Beckham announcing himself to the world with a halfway line strike against Wimbledon. And Cristiano Ronaldo taking one touch on the chest and perfectly lobbing the keeper from 30 yards out for Al Nassr. As fans, we watch these feats of athleticism and completely lose our minds. But as learners, we've got to ask, how on earth is this physically possible? Which brings us to Section 2. The physics of flight. Math behind the magic.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how physicists actually figure out the flight of a wonder goal. They map initial conditions on a Cartesian coordinate system. So, we've got the z direction for height, x for the forward direction toward the goal, and y for the lateral distance. But velocity alone just doesn't cut it. You absolutely need the initial topspin and sidespin. Those initial conditions are the absolute foundation of a wonder goal.
And those spins, they activate something absolutely crucial, the Magnus force. This is the aerodynamic force that dictates lift and curve. When a player like Beckham hits a long bomb, or Zlatan executes that bicycle kick, they're imparting a specific angular speed onto a ball with a specific radius traveling at a specific linear velocity. The Magnus force is quite literally the invisible hand curving the ball past the goalkeeper's outstretched gloves. But the ball is fighting the air the entire way. You have the drag force, which acts purely on linear velocity to pull the ball back, and that battles against the lift and spin forces shifting its trajectory sideways or upwards. To calculate the resulting acceleration, researchers use a really complex mathematical tool called a Runge-Kutta fourth-order numerical approximation. Think of it as a super high-level math cheat code to map out the exact flight path.
But wait, there's a catch. The spin doesn't just stay constant. There is a momentum force causing spin decay. Just like a golf ball, as the soccer ball travels through the air at turbulent speeds, usually over 10 meters per second, the air friction actually decays the topspin and sidespin midway through the flight. This actively and dynamically alters the Magnus force right up until the ball lands.
Let's move to Section 3, the mechanics of the bounce, impact and friction.
Let's see how this builds when the ball inevitably hits the pitch. Think about this for a second. What exactly happens to the ball when it smashes into the turf at 25 meters per second? It's not just a simple ricochet. It is a highly complex, energy-shifting collision that takes place in just a fraction of a second.
The bounce happens in really rapid, distinct stages. First, the ball literally deforms based on its internal pressure. As it flattens out and rebounds, there is a massive transfer of energy. Translational energy is lost, but rotational energy can actually be gained. Finally, depending on the angle and spin of approach, the ball experiences either rolling or sliding friction against the grass.
The coefficient of restitution determines the new vertical z-velocity. Meanwhile, the sliding or rolling friction acts on the bottom of the ball, literally adding a topspin torque. What this means, practically, is that every single bounce generates a completely new set of initial conditions. The physics loop we were just talking about,
It essentially resets and recalculates in real time until the ball finally comes to a stop in the net.
Section 4. Tracking the trajectory, digital deconstruction.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we study this outside of theoretical equations. We pivot to digital video analysis. A MATLAB program can use HSV and RGB color values to isolate the specific pixels of the ball against the stadium background, frame by frame. That raw visual data is then translated into an exact 3D theoretical trajectory graph. We are mathematically isolating the magic.
And videographers do this all the time too. If you want to track a player making a game-winning run like Ryan Grant in the A-League Grand Final, use software like After Effects. You isolate a track point, maybe the player's head. You tell the software to stop tracking if it loses the point so it doesn't guess wildly. You manually readjust frame by frame if needed, and finally apply that motion data to a 3D null object layer. It's painstaking work, for sure, but it lets us visually capture these split-second marvels.
Section 5. The emotion and lore, immortalizing the strike.
So, the crucial point is how this all comes together. Listen to legendary commentator Peter Drury calling Kostas Manolis' 2018 Champions League goal against Barcelona. Roma have risen from their ruins. Manolis, the Greek god in Rome. You see, a wonder goal is elevated by the poetic words that accompany it. The math creates the trajectory, sure, but the commentary, that immortalizes the feat.
Or take this historic quote from the opening match of the 2010 World Cup. Sipofle Shabalala scores for the host nation, and Drury declares, "Go for all Africa!" It's way more than just a ball hitting a net. It's about a visceral, global fan celebration. It's the roar of the crowd in super slow motion.
We are left with this incredible, deep duality. On one side, we have the science, drag forces, Magnus spin, coefficients of restitution, and pixel tracking. On the other side, the spectacle, the sheer audacity of an athlete, the tear-inducing fan emotion, and the poetic commentary. You really cannot have the magic without the math, and honestly, the math is kind of meaningless without the spectacle.
Which brings us to our final thought today. Is a wonder goal ultimately made by the physics of the strike or the voice that calls it? Think about that the next time you see an absolute rocket launch from the halfway line. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and I'll catch you next time.